What's up? This is Hoppe Hour. I am your host, Ryan Hoppe. And from Intern John and your morning show, the one and only Intern John is on Hoppe Hour with Ryan Hoppe. What's up, bro?
Ryan, man, thanks for having me, man. I was waiting for my interview. I kept seeing everybody else get posted on Facebook, and I was like, golly, hopefully one day I'll get the call.
I'll be honest. I wasn't sure if you would do it or not. Like, I've been wanting to have you on. I was like, should I hit him up? And then some point I was like, I got to hit him up.
No, I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to this.
So how has everything been with the show? What I like about your show is that it comes off very likable. It's like hanging out with a bunch of friends.
Yeah, that's kind of the vibe. So my show is unique in that we all have known each other for at least 8 years. So I got to DC 12 years ago. I guess it'll be 13 years in October. And then my current producer, Eric, has been there for like 18 years.
Yeah.
Hoodie, my other producer, has been off and on for like 8 years. Sauce, my co-host, off and on for 8 years. Rose, my other co-host, about 10 years. Even though Hoodie left for Seattle for part of his journey, Sauce went to Baltimore and then Atlanta. So, but like at least 8 years, so we do kind of know each other pretty well, which is unique. So it's been a good run.
What is the communication like with your team? Some shows I've worked on, you're in a group text all day, and some of them are like, we will talk to you in 19 hours. Leave me alone.
So we have like a running group text, and then there's a bunch of different group texts. Like I have a group text with me and my producers that's more so just like the technical aspect of things throughout the day. I would say Sauce and I text almost hourly just because that's my best friend.
Yeah.
And then there's a show group text as well. So we're pretty in regular contact, which is good. I think it'd be odd if we didn't talk at all and then turned it on, but different strokes, different folks.
Well, I've always found it fascinating. Like growing up, I loved Opie and Anthony. Like that was the show I heard in 6th grade. I loved them. But I had no idea that they hated each other, and it didn't really work out for them in the end. I've always found it fascinating when I hear about shows where they sound like they're buddies on air, and then they hate each other in real life. It's crazy.
Yeah, I've definitely been and seen rooms where when the mics are off, nobody talks. And, at the end of the day, this job is supposed to be fun.
Yeah.
Like, we could be doing a lot worse things. And I think usually when it gets to that point, there's been so many micro problems that are probably ignored for a long time. Yeah. It's just like any relationship. If you don't fix the small stuff, it just kind of builds, and then it gets to the point where nobody wants to fix anything, and eventually it implodes. I think that unfortunately happens a little bit too often. So we try to have the difficult conversations right away, and it makes it easier down the line.
Now, when I first moved to Tampa, I immediately, when I would go to Kelta's show, I would kind of tune into the radio and see what was on. And man, I was a big fan of what you and Kane did. I met Kane at the Morning Show Boot Camp in 2014. This is when Fred in Chicago went by the name Brother Fred. It was a long time ago. Yeah. And he didn't give me like advice, but I just talked to him for 5 minutes, and he was a really good dude. What were some of your favorite memories of Kane?
Oh, man. So I started off with Dave Ryan in Minneapolis.
Oh, really?
Legendary KDWB.
Nice.
Yeah. And so I first was aware of Kane when iHeart launched the app, and there were like 2 or 3 shows that had their own channel. One was Kane, one was Bobby Bones. I listened to both of them. I was like, okay, like these two are really, really good.
I remember those days.
Then, and then so with Kane, like I had heard the rumors, that like, he's a wizard with the board. He's a wizard with Vox Pro. He has a studio in his house. He does Club K on the weekends. So I had heard the rumors, and then when I finally got to there in person and saw him do his thing, I was like, oh, he is probably the best at that. So I spent, probably 6. Well, I've been hosting the show now for 4 years. So I guess I spent like 9-ish years just watching everything he did and just soaking it up, just because he was probably the most prolific host I think I've ever had a chance to see in person. So literally just watched everything he did and would listen to old shows and just kind of like, it's like if you're Tom Brady's backup quarterback, you could learn a lot by watching one of the best to do it. I was very lucky to have that experience for 9 or so years.
I can relate to that. I worked with Calta, I worked with Rover's Morning Glory, and it would actually freak them out, bro. I would just stare at them running the board, and they're like, "Why are you looking at me?" I'm like, "Because I want to learn." Like when you're watching the top dogs do their thing, it's almost the lessons you can learn from that you cannot be taught at a radio school.
No, and I think that the part of the reason I was able to take over the show was I knew how to run the board, and I think that there's so many people in radio who think they know how to run a board.
Yeah.
But like run it during a live show while you're also looking at the text line, while you're also looking at the phone line. It's a different experience. I always tell like everybody who does radio, I'm like, hey, if you ever want to get the call, you have to. I mean, it's no different than flying a plane. Like you have to get your hours flying the actual plane, And yeah, I got lucky certainly, but if you don't know how to work the stuff, and it sounds so basic, but I wouldn't be able to do the show if I didn't know how to run the board. Like that opportunity wouldn't have come.
You guys, man, had a great run on Tampa radio for a long time, probably 2015 to 2019. When I would go on first dates, a lot of times, bro, whenever I would be asked, what do you do for a living? And I said radio, a lot of them said, oh, is it similar to Kane on FLZ? Is that kind of cool to think that, like, the impact that you brought to Tampa Bay radio was just talked about amongst random people? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think, lucky for me, as far as Tampa, Kane first got to Tampa. That was his first, like, big gig. So he did the night show at FLZ for years. Then he went to XM, and then I think he went back to Tampa, and then he went to DC. But the morning show is then put on afternoons in Tampa, and then once MJ left, they put the Kane show live in the morning. So by the time I got to the Kane show, he was probably in Tampa for like 10, 15 years already. So it really was like a heritage show. And Tampa radio, it's the craziest thing I've ever experienced in my life, just in general. But to be on that legendary station that, so many great, Hall of Fame personalities built, and then being able to kind of ride Kane's coattail, like that, Tampa was, I think, obviously DC was home for him, but Tampa was always his favorite city. We would go down like 6 or 7 times a year, broadcast from Gandy. And
I saw you guys at the Gasparilla Parade in 2017, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, we were down there Gasparilla every year. We'd go Memorial Day, Labor Day, Jingle Ball, and then other times. So we were down there a lot, which was really cool. But yeah, I mean, I think that's the city where he kind of found who his voice was, so to speak. And then, so Tampa was always of the utmost importance to him.
You know who speaks very well about you, who I've worked with and love, is Brian Donovan, Munchie. He's always been a huge proponent for you guys.
Yeah, it's funny. So Munch does digital stuff basically for all of Florida now. And I always tell people too with radio, it's a very small industry, and it's just so much easier to be a good person because you just never know who's going to be where. And so Munch has always been great. Like there's a bunch of folks that we come across where it's like you just never know who's going to be there. So I guess I've known Munch now for 13 years, which is kind of crazy.
It's crazy.
But he was a great dude. And I think too, like with Munch, Munch did the digital stuff. And I think sometimes as talent, we forget how much our digital team and their talent just as much do. So if you're nice to your digital team, it's crazy how many ideas they bring for you and how quickly they can turn stuff around. Munchie was always the best at turning around video or photos, whatever we needed. The man's amazing.
Now, what is the biggest difference between the radio landscape of Washington, D.C. and Tampa?
Ooh, that's tough. D.C. is very transplanty, so like every 4 years the population changes.
Tampa's kind of transplanty a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, I think the other problem with D.C., it's not so much the actual District of Columbia. I think like there's probably more people that listen to radio in Tampa Bay than there is in the District of Columbia. Like for us, it's like Maryland and Virginia are right there. So our biggest like listening cities are there. So it's kind of like, Z100 in New York, you're not necessarily broadcasting to Manhattan. You're broadcasting to Connecticut and New Jersey and kind of like the suburbs. Where I think Tampa, you can get a little bit more of the actual like downtown. But I like it. It's not that different. Otherwise, people are still passionate about it, and for us, the show, our show will be 5 years in April. But with the Kane Show brand, it's basically 20 years running. So we got kind of the heritage vibe, which has been really nice the last couple of years.
So, like, when I was growing up in Chicago, I would have Drex on, Eddie and Jobo, Mancow, Brandmeier, and I would be on the school bus between '04 to 2010 listening to the radio. Now, when you were in radio, or you are still in radio, but like, have you ever had that thought that you're like, man, someone's listening right now that's on their way to school? Like, whenever I would go into Calta show, I would always think like, there's someone who's like in a bad mood and we're here to entertain them. Do you ever have that thought in your mind?
Yeah. So the cool thing about what we've done, like I do stand-up shows for charity, and we're always kind of out doing various events and stuff. So like, we'll meet people all the time. We'll be like, hey, you got me through insert tragedy here. There was a woman who, one of her last dates with her husband was at my comedy show, and she told me this a couple months ago. And I was like, oh man, so you never really think of like, and that's why I think radio people who are bitter sometimes, like there's somebody listening right now who is literally having the worst day of their life, and they're looking for you to distract them for 5 minutes, And so, and it's cool too. Like I'll meet people who, I'm getting to the point now where like I started listening to you in middle school, which it hurts a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's cool that like, people are growing up with us, and, it's always been cool for me, like how much people know about my life.
It's weird though.
It's a very cool thing. And but it's also, it just means that people are invested, it means we're doing something right, where they know what my parents do. They know my brother, I lost my dog passed away New Year's, and I've gotten like thousands and thousands of messages because, the entire DMV knew that I moved here with him. He was 15 and a half when he passed. So they kind of grew up with me and him too. So it's a very unique thing of like, even realizing how much my dog touched people, it's just, it's a very powerful medium that I think, it's funny, people outside radio always try to kill radio and be like, radio's dying, and they never quite get why we're not dying. And it's simply because you can listen to a show, you can text the show, we'll text back right away. You can call the show if you're having a bad day or be a part of something. And I don't think other mediums quite get that. And that's how we survive, and that's how we've been surviving. And we've been lucky to do that.
Well, I see this meme whenever there's like a hurricane. I'm sure you've seen it, where it shows this tweet of this Gen Z kid, and it said something like, I wish Spotify would have a person that talks in between songs that gives out emergency info. And it's like, that's literally radio.
Yeah, I know. I think it was Spotify trying to do the AI DJ thing too, and it's just like not quite there. I think it's like, not to get into psychology, but I think Maslow's hierarchy of needs, or maybe, Maslow, after food and shelter, the second or the third need that we have is like community. So like, that's pretty high up there. So you need to feel like there's somebody there who's going through what you're going through, who's a real person. I think sometimes too, like when jocks take out the personality, we kind of lose that a little bit. I think that's why personality has never been more important.
Now, when it's a slow news day, how do you find things to talk about?
Yeah, so the way our show works is at the end of the day, everybody will send me like 3 or 4 stories that they think are good for the show. And so I have 5 or 6 people on my show, so I get like 20 or so stories. So I'll go through what I think will be good, and then I do my own stuff as well. I think, sometimes I've heard shows admit they ran out of stuff to talk about, which to me is crazy. That's like the most wild thing ever. So for us, it's always just finding something. I think, if we find it interesting, that makes it easier, certainly, but hopefully stuff for the audience find interesting as well. I always explain it's like planning a football game. Like you have a game plan, but if something's not working, you better have enough plays to go to something else. And that's kind of what we try to do. So if something's not hitting the feeling the right way it should, we'll just audible and do something else.
How exciting, speaking of football, how exciting were the Commanders this year for DC?
Yeah, so it's interesting because our show, we're on in D.C. and Baltimore, so you talk about a tale of two cities. The Ravens have won 2 championships in 20 years, something like that. And then, the Commanders, that fan base has been kicked in the teeth for basically 2 decades. So to finally have something going and something good going too kind of felt good. I think the Capitals, I know the Capitals do well here, so that's good, but when the football team's rolling, I think that's something the whole city certainly gets behind. So that's been exciting. And then, of course, there's talks of a new stadium, which hopefully mean bigger shows coming to town concert-wise, because we missed Taylor on her last run.
Really?
We missed some of the big pop. Yeah, because we don't really. The football stadium for the Commanders is like 30 years old, and it's a giant POS. So they're trying to get a new stadium, which would be good. Because we had Taylor here probably like 7 years ago and did a really cool a tailgate party with a stage and that kind of stuff outside the baseball stadium, which was dope. And I think that's the one thing too with radio. It's like at live events, making it seem like we're cool, not just having a table with a little, table flag over it and then nothing there. It's like, no, we got to show that we're cool and show we want to be places and get in front of people.
Well, you also got to be careful because I don't know who runs that page, Shitty Radio PD, but they will literally expose somebody. Like I know somebody who runs a promotions team in like a small market in Illinois, and they went to the bathroom real quick. And somebody took a picture of the dead table and said that was the promotions team. And I don't know who runs that page, but in the social media era, you always got to look good now, bro.
Yeah, I think I know there's those 2 pages, and I think for the most part, I think they certainly have well intention. I think sometimes too, my fear with that stuff is always I would hate for the wrong people to get the heat put on them. You know what I mean?
That's what happened with my friend. Yeah.
So again, I believe you. I have no idea, but like that's the one thing sometimes I worry about where it's like, I think it's good to, protect the innocent and try to rally that, but sometimes I worry the wrong people end up getting the brunt of the poor decisions. Yeah.
What's the biggest difference between being on air in Washington, D.C. and being on air in Baltimore?
It's kind of the same. But, Baltimore is more blue collar. I think. I think Baltimore is also more Baltimore pride. DC is a little bit different because it's really like, again, it's the District of Columbia, so you have DC proper, but Maryland and Virginia are kind of like, so like Arlington, Virginia is really big, or like Bethesda, Maryland's really big. Baltimore is all about Baltimore. It's Ravens, it's the Orioles, it's Crabs, it's Natty Bo. So I think Baltimore to me reminds me a lot of the Midwest. I know you're a Midwest guy.
Yeah.
I am too, where it's like,
where you from?
Live and breathe. St. Paul, Minnesota.
Oh,
yeah,
so
born and raised.
So working for Dave Ryan was like working for the hometown hero, essentially.
Oh yeah, dude. So I grew up working for Dave, and then so Dave is to Minneapolis what Mojo is to Detroit, what Elvis is to New York. Dave he's the man.
Even
so
I think Fred's become that for Chicago. I'm really close I'm really close with Fred, and I remember his first day on air, and everybody was crucifying him, saying this isn't Drex in the morning. And now you look at Fred, and I'm so proud of that guy.
Yeah, and Fred's been a really good friend to me. If I ever need advice, he's been a great person to talk to. And I tell him all the time, like, I'm so happy for his success. I think
me too.
It's so cool. And I think too often in radio, people get jealous of other people's success. But to me, for a guy like Fred, it's like, how can you possibly hate on Fred? Like, he's put his time in. He fixed that radio station, and he's grown it to what it is. Like, and he's a super stand-up guy. I can't. I got my dog passed. Like, Fred sent a really nice a painting that he didn't have to do. But I think, so the cool thing about radio, in my experience, like the biggest names are the nicest guys. Bobby Bones, when I first got the job as the host of my own show, Bobby was like the first one to call me. Charlemagne the God in New York, so one of my really good radio friends.
Great guy.
I mean? And I met Charlemagne because probably 10 years ago, I started sending him my air check just to like, hey, like, would love your thoughts. Like, we became friends just because of that. And that's why I always tell like people who are up and coming radio, send your air check to everybody all the time, even if they don't respond. I was sending my air check to John Ivey, who is like the czar of Top 40, and Bob Pittman, who's our CEO.
Yeah.
When I was doing nights in Des Moines, just because I was like, I might as well send it to them. Worst comes to worst, they don't respond. Best case scenario, they remember the name. And so that's how Charlemagne and I became friends, and Bobby as well too. But yeah, listening to Dave growing up and then getting a chance to work on his show was just like, I got lucky to watch how Dave did things for 4 years, how Kane did things for 9 years, whatever it was. So my pedigree is for a morning show that it's, you couldn't really ask for anything better.
What's some of the best advice that you got from Dave Ryan?
The one thing about Dave, well, it's funny. So working with Dave, I couldn't have asked for a better example of a host. Dave will always try new bits. If it doesn't work out, whatever. Dave is also good about giving credit to people who come up with ideas. So if I wrote a parody song or parody commercials, he would give me the credit for it. And I think Dave also did a great job of promoting the women on his show. If you look at the women on Dave's show, the ones who all left to do bigger markets. Angie Taylor left, went to Philly, went to Chicago. Lena Svensson left, went to New York. Corey Foley left, went to San Francisco. Like, Fallon's now doing her own afternoon show.
Didn't what's her name begin there? Kenzie K too?
I wasn't there when she was. I think she was after me.
Yeah.
I think she might have interned. But I always thought that like that was normal. And it wasn't until I started talking to other radio people, I was like, oh, not everybody like promotes the women on their show. Not everybody gives credit to people who are coming up with ideas. Like, I just thought that was a normal thing, but I was like, oh, that's just Dave. And not everybody tries new ideas out. Dave is always doing that, and he still does that. They're still doing new stuff and trying to keep it interesting. I think that's so many people like rip and read the complete sheet, and that's never been Dave.
How much of that sheet do you use? Any of it?
I think that, I like that stuff when it's a story that I already found, but they put it in a more like readable way, I guess, if that makes sense. And I think it's always good too. I think if you rely solely on that stuff, I think that's dangerous. And not that they're bad services, but I think it's the more stuff you have, I think the better. I don't like relying on somebody else for my show, although like I think they do a great job, certainly, and it's good to have that kind of stuff there as a supplements. But if you're not doing the own work yourself, I think that's dangerous. And I also think if you're not doing your own work yourself, you don't know what's going on in the world, which is even more dangerous.
Now, you've been to a morning show boot camp, correct?
Yeah, I did Chicago and I did Dallas a couple of years back.
I don't remember much of it because that's when I was drinking a lot. But I always, the social aspect of it at night is very fun. But I always got some good advice during the day from the panels. And one of them was when there was like a panel of people that were married to their market, like Rick Rumble, Norfolk, Jeff and Jer, San Diego. I think Dave Ryan was on it. And I've always respected that. Like, I think like, even though you're in two cities, like you're married to that area, like it's kind of a cool concept to be like local. Like you don't always have to be syndicated in 100 markets, Well, and they always tell you with syndication, like you can't lose your home market. So like, make no mistake, like Fred's getting a bunch of stations, which is great, but like Chicago's his priority. Because if you lose the home state, and like for Elvis, it's Z100. If you lose that home market, it's over. So like, I think there's a problem sometimes when shows get other cities and the other cities become the focus. But the reality is, like, your home market's probably going to be your biggest market, realistically. You can't let that suffer. So I think that's a good practice for anybody, even if you're not syndicated. It's like, you got to grow the base.
That's where the endorsements come from. That's where the sales stuff comes from. That's where all that stuff comes from. So I think once your base is solid, then you can look for the growth.
The thing that Fred's doing really well about being syndicated and still being in Chicago is like he was talking last week about being in Salt Lake City for their new affiliate, but he was kind of making fun of the silly things about Salt Lake City. And I was thinking someone in the car in Chicago would enjoy this, because a lot of times people would be on in Chicago but talk about other cities, and Chicago is the one market, Intern John, that literally, because I'm from Chicago, we don't care about other cities. And the fact that Fred just had great ratings shows that he knows how to be syndicated without losing Chicago's ears.
Yeah, I think that's a very Midwest thing too. Like the Midwest is all about the Midwest. I mean, Fred, again, he's a smart dude where it's like he's reporting back to his friends basically, you know? It's not like he's abandoning the base that got him there. I think it's just like any company. If you abandon your base, good luck. That's good luck to you. Your base is what got you there. And, Fred certainly, he's figured it out.
How similar is Minneapolis to Chicago? Minneapolis is one of the cities I haven't been to.
Yeah, so Minneapolis and St. Paul are considered one market. So it's Minneapolis, St. Paul, it's divided by a river. I think Chicago is market 3. Minneapolis is like 16. So fairly similar in that, I think. Very local to like our teams, of course. The Vikings are miserable. Everybody loves them. The Wild, the Twins, and the Wolves. So I think a lot of like the most folks in the Midwest are just like hardworking, honest folks. And so I think those are similar. I think obviously Chicago's got probably more of a big city feel, but for the most part, I've been to Chicago several times. It doesn't feel that much different than home.
Yeah, there's something weird about these Midwest cities. Like even when I worked in Cleveland was like a darker, trashier version of Cleveland. Like a lot, honestly, too. One time I took a picture of downtown Tampa like 8 years ago, and someone said that it was Milwaukee with palm trees. Like even Tampa kind of has like a little bit of a Midwest vibe. Not St. Pete, but specifically Tampa.
Yeah, I think there's so many probably folks Midwest that are down there too. Yeah, I mean, also I think Midwest, I think we're kind of like the outsiders, like the rest of the country looks down on us. I think Tampa, I love Tampa. I think Tampa and Jacksonville get looked down upon by like the Miamis of the world. And I think they kind of own that. Like, yeah, we're our own thing. We don't need the approval of Miami. The Midwest does not need the approval of the East Coast. Like we're farm people. We're simple people. We don't need the flashy stuff. And I think I think Tampa certainly has that too. In Tampa, people just don't give a damn like what you think of them. And it's amazing. The South Tampa douchebag is fantastic. Everything about Tampa is fantastic. I always tell people there's a great lunch spot, Mons Venus. If you get a chance to
Hell
go.
yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, fantastic lunch spot. Great. Bring the whole family down.
I'm more of an Odyssey guy. Oh, man.
Sure.
Dude, Yeah, go on.
I'd say it's like spaceship, yeah.
Well, bro, it's weird. I didn't realize. Okay, so I was at a conservative job for 7 months doing conservative radio before I went back to Beasley. And my mom said to me, she goes, are you sure you're going to fit in at that job? You're full of hedonism. And I was like, what does that even mean? And I Googled it. And then I was like, well, I did go to every strip club in Tampa at some point since 2015. Like, it really begins to add up. You're like, oh, I went to that one and that one. I don't go anymore, but it was quite the era, bro.
Yeah, it's market research.
Oh, man, it was the worst leaving at 2:30 because I thought they were going to love me. I had the ego, Intern John, that I thought going to a strip club was the way to a girl's heart. Not at all.
Sure.
My favorite Tampa memory of a strip club, bro, my favorite memory is the Penthouse, September 2020. It was my 26th birthday, and they put little miniature masks over their nipples. Because it was COVID.
Oh yeah. It
was the best.
That's Tampa, dude. Tampa's like, yeah, we're not Miami. We don't care. You know what I mean? That's what makes it great.
I had a job interview in Fort Lauderdale a year and a half ago with Patrick Bet-David, that guy that runs that conservative company. And my goodness, I felt so out of place. I had not been to Fort Lauderdale, but the difference between Fort Lauderdale and Tampa is unheard of. It's so different.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest, Tampa's a little white trash.
Oh, it is.
There's nothing wrong with that.
They don't want to admit it. They get mad if it's brought up, but it's trashy. It's trashy here. Yeah,
but like in a beautiful way, though. It doesn't mean the people are bad. I mean, the people are great. It's just like, yeah, it's not Miami, and they don't pretend to be, and they don't care. That's amazing.
One time, Calta said to me that Jacksonville was the armpit of Florida. I think Tampa's the other armpit. Tampa is.
Yeah.
I mean, wrestling came from here. This area made Bubba the Love Sponge famous. I mean, how can that not be trashy?
Oh, good old Bubba. Yeah, man. The Tampa radio, there needs to be a documentary on that.
There's like a few fake documentaries, like Froggy from the MJ Show made online. It got tiring because I was kind of a part of it a little bit, Intern John, and it was fun at first, but then like when your personal life gets out there, because you guys had to deal with some of that in Washington, D.C., like a lot of these anonymous trolls online, and a lot of times I'll hear comedians describe people on Reddit as people that live in their mom's basement with their mom on Reddit. Like Jim Florentine, Jim Florentine will always be like, oh, they're a bunch of losers that live in their mom's basement. What scares me about Reddit and anonymous trolls is it could be a coworker, it could be a neighbor, because there's some people that get obsessed. It's kind of like a parasocial relationship. It's quite frightening.
Yeah, but the funny thing that I found, and again, this is just Midwest in me, it's just life is so much easier when you just tell the truth, even if it's not popular. So like, there's been people who try to troll me, and it's like, there's no skeletons in my closet. Anything I've said to somebody, I would gladly say it to their face. Like, it makes life so much easier. Also, I think that's the problem too with radio, going back to like radio shows having infighting. It's like, me as the host, it's my job for the show to sound the way that I think it should. So if somebody's doing something that I don't think is best for the show or could be done better, it's my job to tell them right away in a way that sounds encouraging, so that I don't expect them to read my mind. And then if I try to tell them 5 years down the line, it's a problem. You know what I mean? I think that's like whatever I would say to a co-host, I would say to somebody else. I think that's the problem with radio is, for being in the communication industry, we're horrendous at communicating. I don't know why that is.
It's weird,
but that tends to be why there's like that. But that's why there's buildup. And I had I was talking to a higher up boss I heard. I don't want to blow up their spot.
It's all good.
We're talking about this. We're talking about life and stuff. And the best advice that they said to me was, listen, if you ever are about to fire somebody, it shouldn't be a surprise to that person. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, well, they should have an idea that they aren't performing up to standard. It shouldn't be they are blown out of the water. And I was like, oh, yeah. If people don't want to do a bad job, like I was talking about this on my show today, like I believe 99% of people want to do a good job, like want to be good at their job. And there's maybe the 1% that don't give a damn, but most people don't want to be bad at their job. So if they're not doing their job well, is it because they don't care, or is it because nobody's coached them? And I think it tends to be because nobody's coached them, and that's a problem.
What do you think of remote work?
With radio, I think for sales it's horrible. I think that like for our sales staff, when they were doing remote stuff, and it's not their fault. Yeah. Like they would wake up and then get to work right away, like in their home offices, whereas before they'd get in the car and they would turn on the radio and listen to the shows and know what's going on. So once we started going back to we always were in the office as the show, but once the sales started going back to the office, like the endorsements started coming back again because the sales staff was listening to the show. I'm like, oh, they're talking about, waxing. I know a waxing client that we should get on the air. So I think for our job, it's also a bit of an oxymoron if we don't have people in the office, but we're telling clients, hey, you should advertise because people are in their cars. Well, if we're not in our cars, why would a client advertise? You know what I mean? Like that, I don't think that's the best way. As far as remote work to like other markets, I mean, That's tougher. I think that I've always tried to have the belief that any market that I'm on in besides my home one, I'm there because we took somebody else's job away, so we better have pride in it. And I think that sometimes people forget that, and I think that's a sad reality of like, yeah, it's great if you get a couple new stations, but like somebody lost their job, so that you can at least honor them by doing the best you can, not making a throwaway shift.
And that's what I've always liked about you. I'm not trying to kiss your ass, but you've always come off like the dude that you care about other people. Because there seems like, I don't know, there's this like sociopathic nature within radio sometimes where people don't care about others. And it's like, you can maybe just care a little bit, not too much, but just enough.
Yeah, it's funny. I appreciate you saying that. Like, we're all in the same boat. And I think that's like the frustrating thing sometimes when I hear about people talk about their bosses not being great in radio. It's like, this is one of the few industries where all the bosses are radio people. So like they know the struggles. I'm lucky at Hot, my PD Cruz was on the night show at Hot, and now it's PD. Our OM, Jeff Capucci, Chicago boy, was the one that kind of made this station what it was. He brought Kane here years ago. Our Sia Mitchum, who's like one of our SVP of programming, was the PD of Hot. So I'm very lucky in that sense. But yeah, I think, when I was starting off, I was in Minneapolis for 4 years, went to Des Moines for 11 months, and I never forget, I sent my air check to a bunch of jocks that I looked up to, and only 2 responded, JoJo Wright and Billy the Kid. And JoJo Wright is one of the greatest to ever do it. Billy the Kid, one of the greatest to ever do it. And they both sent like really thoughtful emails back of like, yeah, you sound great. I would do this. You should do this. And I'll never forget those guys doing that. And there's like, not throwing names out, there was a jock that I emailed when I was in college because I was going to be in his town for spring break. And I thought it'd be so cool to see the studio. Yeah. And he never replied back. And I probably sent him 4 emails. He never replied back. Then when I got to DC, he hit me up because he wanted to come see me. And I was like, yo, like, you didn't give 2 squirts of piss about me before. I don't know. I think that's just like and maybe it's just the Midwest in us. I think it's easy to be a nice person.
I'm the same way. I think it's the Midwest. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just like, I think it's easier to be a nice person. You don't know what somebody's going through. And I think it's cool now that I try to be as helpful as I can to other people. And also, too, like I said this at boot camp years ago, to me, it's like with radio people, you should like every radio person's Instagram post. Without even seeing what it is, you should like it. Especially if it's a sponsored post, it's an ad. Because, like, we're not making millions of dollars. So if somebody is posting a sponsored ad for radio, like the post, man. Like, give them some engagement so that they can get paid, especially because it's not money out of your pocket. You know what I mean? So it's like if you have 50 radio people following you, you should like expect you're getting at least 50 likes on a post. You know what I mean? Like the little things of like, we can, support each other better than we do. And especially because there's not a lot of us left. So I think like this fake bullshit of trying to cut each other off, I've never really been a fan of that. I think that, again, like, if you look at the biggest in our industry, and for iHeart, obviously it's Bobby, it's Fred, it's Mojo, it's Dave, it's Elvis, Woody has been fantastic. The Breakfast Club, they're all really nice people. Like, they're just very nice people, and people you want to root for. And, for me, it's like I get excited to see my friends win. Again, going back to Fred, I think it's great. Every market he gets, I text him like, dude, congratulations! Like, that's exciting. And I think
me
that,
too.
like,
I text him.
We need more. We need more of that because it's like it's cool, dude. Because like he's put his work in, and everybody else. Bobby certainly has. So it's just like I think everybody will get their time. There's plenty of room at the table, and I just don't. I just never subscribed to being an ass for the sake of being an ass.
I think radio would be better off if it had your mindset, because there's just so many people, especially in this Tampa market, that just root for others to fail. And I'm pretty atheist. Like, I don't really believe in anything. But to me, that's demonic energy. If you want others to fail, that is not something I would want on my heart.
Yeah, dude. And like, I've always had the attitude of, I've known people in radio try to sabotage other people. And it's like, I'm confident that my show can beat anybody. I just am. Like if you put us on any market, like a neutral market, right? So if you put me on in Albuquerque against any show, I'm confident that our show will win because we work hard, we do our listener stuff. I'd rather spend my energy focusing on my show than trying to take down somebody else's, because it's just not worth it. You know what I mean? Like I'd rather win doing things the right way than have to worry about who's behind me and how to get a leg up that way. I don't think that's productive.
I liked working at 102.5 The Bone. It taught me a lot. But one thing I don't miss was driving home angry. Driving home like I'm mad at these Gen X radio dudes that I don't really know that well besides on air. You know what I mean? It was a very unhealthy feeling driving home, being angry. Like, we're in this because we're all radio geeks and we want some type of approval, or there's some reason we're in it. And the fact that people argue, like, there's a time and place for a radio war. Like, if someone does something, call them out. But when people make it their whole persona, it's just so tiring and frankly toxic.
Yeah, I also would argue that I don't think the listeners care. Like, they don't really care about the radio wars.
The ones that I don't want to say don't matter, but the ones that you don't want on your side care. The people that are criminals, people that are deadbeat dads, and I'm not trying to be rude, I'm just being honest. It's the people that are losers in life that really care about that, and they send you DMs, and that's not it, dog.
Well, it's funny. There was a show, and I'm not trying to call anybody out, but there was a show that launched against Mojo in Detroit. And they launched by trying to attack Mojo.
I remember that.
I was like, you guys are so stupid. First of all, Mojo is a fantastic human being.
Great guy.
Second
Love Thomas.
Yeah, you're in the Midwest. Third of all, he's been number one there forever. Like, you look stupid. Like, because what you're doing is, like, if you're doing radio the right way, your audience thinks of you as like a member of the family and a friend. They're not going to take somebody from the outside coming into Detroit is Mojo City. I know he's not from Detroit. He's a Detroiter. Like, you're not going to come into our city and start a fight with our guys.
Was that the show that was like a team of person and person?
Yeah, and like, I'll be honest, I like the two.
Yeah, they're cool.
I worked with them before, and like I had no beef against them. I was like, fellas, I don't think that's the move. And again, like whoever tries to go against Fred, if you go against Fred and you're talking trash about Fred, I promise you're not going to win. Because Fred's a very positive guy. He's invested in that city, certainly. Again, he might as well be from Chicago. It's just not going to work. It's just not going to get the traction that you need. It's funny, too. DC is interesting because you can't have billboards here. In, like, the actual, like, Maryland and Virginia, there's no billboards because of monuments and stuff. So, like, when you launch a station, it's harder. Like, it's a lot harder to do because of that. So you have to get a little bit creative. And there were shows that launched against Kane back in the day who tried to do a similar thing, like would call him out online and post videos and stuff, and then like he destroyed them because it's like, yeah, you can't come into DC and talk trash about Kane. It's just not going to work. But God bless you for trying. It's just an odd thing. I think it's like pitting fan bases against each other. I think most people have bigger problems to worry about than radio wars.
Yeah.
So it's like they just want to be entertained, dude. Like, and you complain about the guy across the street with, and most radio people don't have the balls to actually call somebody out by name. So it's the thinly veiled, generic talking trash where it goes over most of the listeners' heads. You just wasted a break talking trash about your competition. And your listeners have no idea what's going on. Like, what are you doing?
Do you ever, because I'm a big fan of him, do you ever get to talk to Elliot Siegel?
Yeah, so Elliot, legend.
Hell yeah.
And he has been a very nice guy to me. And so Elliot, it's kind of funny because Elliot has this aura about him where it's like, oh, it's Elliot. Like he can be difficult to deal with, or he can be, mean to people. And like, he's been nothing but kind to me. And it's like, yeah, it's funny. There's the old adage like, oh, the grumpy radio guy, the grumpy morning show guy. It's like, no. Now that I have a show, I understand it more. It's like, yeah, when you're the morning guy, like, it all kind of rests on you. And so when something sounds stupid or the station looks bad at an event, like, yeah, you get upset. And with Elliot, like, again, you can't argue that man's success. The man replaced he made that station what it is. It wasn't Howard. It wasn't Howard Stern. Like what Elliot's done for 20 some years.
Didn't he?
It's nothing short of amazing.
Didn't he replace Greaseman? Kind of.
I believe so. Yeah. So it was Howard, then Grease, and Elliot, and I think Elliot. Originally Elliot was on with Elvis Duran on Z100. It was Elvis and Elliot kind of like wanted to do his own thing and took a leap of his own, and that show's a monster, and he's such a good dude. See him in the hallway, say hi to him, we talk hockey. He's been great. Even like when I first got the show, he was very congratulatory and just a very good dude.
I think a lot of people don't realize, because like I've worked with some people like I don't even want to say it to get it in trouble, but I think he would know he has haters. MJ. I've met a lot of people that were like, oh my God, you're going to work with MJ? I bet he's the absolute worst. But MJ is one of my closest radio friends. Like a lot of times these guys from that era, MJ, Elliot, a lot of those guys, they are kind of rough around the edges in kind of a way. But when you get to know them, it's just a radio character. Like me and MJ are tight.
Yeah, I met him once. It was funny because he came into the old FLZ studio I think we were there for a One Direction concert. Yeah. And I was like, whoa, that's like, it's MJ. Yeah, very nice. But I think, again, it goes to, like, most of those morning guys built the station. Like, Dave Ryan built KDWB. When he decides he's done, good luck. Elvis Duran built Z100. So they have a lot invested into it. And, like, they get salty when things aren't done the way they want them to be done. And it's also like, how can you argue if Elvis wants something done a certain way? How can you argue that? The man's the biggest thing in radio. If Dave wants things done a certain way, or Fred, or Bobby, or whoever, it's like they know what they're doing. It's funny, like I'd always heard that Mariah Carey was a diva, and we did an interview with her once over like the phone. And before, so if you don't know, like sometimes like the publicist will pick them up and be like, all right, Mariah, you're gonna be in this market. And before she got on that, she goes, okay, what city is this? What time zone is this? When am I there? What time am I there? And she was upset that people hadn't told her that already. I was like, oh, she's not a diva. She just like has her ish together and wants to make sure she doesn't sound stupid. That she knows what city she's in, when tickets are on sale. And I think most morning people, maybe they don't articulate it the best way, but they just want the station to win because they know how hard it is to maintain this thing.
And it's also because I have spoken to Elliot on the phone. Guys like him are very passionate because they came from an era that was a lot different, and a lot of times people get rubbed the wrong way by how passionate they are. I've had to deal with that where you care so much about your product that you almost come off cocky, but you kind of have to care about your product. With all the competition out there, TikTok, 100 million YouTube options, every service from HBO Max to Netflix, radio has to be at its best at all times. You don't have to put on a perfect show, but you got to care.
Yeah, I mean, so for me, when I was in Des Moines, I slept on the floor for a year eating tuna packets because I couldn't afford like food. So me and my dog ate tuna packets. And so like, I put everything I had into this. When I moved out to DC, it was like, there's no option. Like if this doesn't work out, I have to move home. Like there's no backup plan. So I think too, it's interesting, like you need an ego to do this business, to get on a microphone and assume that you have something important enough to say that people want to listen to it. You have to have a bit of an ego. You certainly need to balance it. And I think like what happens with morning show people, it's like, until I'm wrong, why is anybody questioning me? And like, I'll use Elliot as the example. Until Elliot's wrong about something, nobody should question what he wants for his show until he proves himself wrong. Like that, he makes a bunch of money for the station. He has a bunch of success. So it's like, is it an ego, or does he have a bunch of championship banners hanging in the rafters for his right decisions? Like that to me I don't think that's ego. That's like he's a proven track record of success that very few people in this business have. So it's like that's not ego. He knows what he needs to win, and like it's a fine line certainly, because you can't always pull up the receipts, but it's like. Yeah, he clearly knows he's clearly figured it out. He knows what he's doing.
What are some of your favorite memories of being around FLZ?
Oh man, I think golly, that's a tough one. I mean, certainly Jingle Ball was always great.
Yeah, it
You
was.
know, for Jingle Ball in Tampa, you could have the outside village, so like having Ariana Grande play outside as a baby act, having Sabrina Carpenter outside as a baby act, having Nick Jonas outside as a baby act. That was cool, but it's always cool to like we'd be in DC and radio. It's funny because like I think our in DC we have like 1.5 million listeners, but it's just like us in a room. So it's really cool to go down to Tampa and there's people who listened to the show there and knew who we were. And like I still do comedy shows in Tampa. Every
How
now
is
and then,
that
and, like,
going?
we'll still sell out venues.
What do you
Good,
talk
really
about?
good.
What's your comedy like? I got to go to one of your shows.
Yeah, it's just kind of life stuff. And, you know, the beauty of that is I've been doing it for 8 years, and we did the math a couple of years ago, but I've done something like 60,000 meet and greets where we met like 60,000 people. And, yeah, that just goes to like, we got to be out in the streets, man. You got to be shaking hands. You got to be making memories. You got to be making an impact to where like, you know, you've obviously met celebrities in the day, and if you have a good meeting with a celebrity, like you'll forgive them down the line if they happen to mess up on something, right? So like if a listener has a good experience with you in person, and maybe you slip up one day and say something that they don't really agree with, they'll cut you slack if they've had a good experience with you. Because like, oh, I know, like, yeah, I don't agree that, you know, pineapple shouldn't be on pizza, but like they were really cool. I met them, so I'll let it slide. You know, I've always thought it was funny. It's like when a celebrity has a scandal and nobody comes out to support them, it's because that person's a douchebag. Like you just kind of know, and that's blatantly obvious. That's why. And yeah, I think that you need people in your corner. So for me, it was always like landing in Tampa and it being just like DC, where like people were still passionate about the show, knew everything about the show, and just were happy we were there.
What is your advice? I have to deal with a lot of haters online because I'm outspoken, and I promise you the hate doesn't get to me, but it's a little annoying at times. What have you done, being a guy that has so many listeners and then beginning with both legends, Dave Ryan and Kane, so those shows have their own share of haters? What is the ultimate key to dealing with haters?
I think the biggest thing is like, I know who I am. You know, it was funny. There was somebody who was trying to get under my skin like last weekend who was like, oh, people texting me saying you're not a good person. And I was like, I said to them, I know that's not true. Like, it's just like, yeah, I know that's not true. I think as long as you know who you are, it's going to be fine. And like, though that like, not everybody's going to like you. That's just the reality of it. It is what it is. And it's not even they don't like you. They probably just don't like themselves. I think that like I know that I'm a good person, and like if somebody's like if I got a call from a news agency say like, hey, this person a source is gonna drop a bomb about you tomorrow, I'd be like, it's not true. Like there's nothing, you know what I mean? So I think as long as you just live an honest life, again, like honest can be telling somebody the truth, but they might not want to hear it, and that's okay. But at least then it's like I never have to worry about, oh, I told this person one thing, but I told this person the other thing, and this person the other thing. It's like, no, I think just as long as you're just honest, it makes things easier. And yeah, it's just like the people that hate you online, it's like, yeah, they don't know you. Like the people in your life care about you, so it's not even worth your time. And I think just people who get a rise out of talking trash online. Oh, yeah. You will never convince them because they don't want to be convinced. They just want to be a dick. And that's like, you're not going to win against that person. And the best defense, as always, if somebody comments something negative, for the most part, your fans will defend you. And like they're the best defense you need, where it's like they'll come in, swoop in, so you don't even have to be a vigilante that way. So I think that's the easiest thing. Is like, and like if you have haters, that means they're listening. You know, it's the Private Parts, the Howard movie, talked about like I think it's in New York, like 60% of the audience couldn't stand.
Oh yeah, I love that line. I love that line.
Why are they listening? Because they want to hear what he says next. So yeah, so if you're hating, you're still listening. Like, thanks. You know.
Now, since you're from Minneapolis, I'm a radio geek, obviously, and you know who I've been emailing a lot. Who's a really good dude. I'm a big fan. I found him a year ago of the 93X Half-Ass Morning Show. I talked to Josh a lot. I really like that show.
Yeah, they I don't remember what company it was, but they've had a couple
Cumulus
cash changes in my day. Okay, they've had a couple of cash changes in my day, but those guys have always been, or at least that show has always been really good. Yeah, they kind of do their own thing. And Minneapolis, it's a good radio market. The sports station, K-Fan,
Yeah, it is.
their morning show usually is like one of the top in the country. And obviously, you have Dave and Tom Bernard was a radio legend there for a long time. So it's a very, very healthy market.
It's so funny. So I work with a lot of younger people. So I do a little bit of everything at Beasley, but I also do promotions when needed because I don't mind the hours. And it's so weird that a lot of these kids that were born in 2004, I say kids, but they're grown adults, but like when they were 4, radio was doing the major layoffs in '08. Like, I feel sad for a lot of the Gen Z, like the later Gen Z that missed out on really good radio.
Yeah, but it's also like we need to use them though now. I think I coach high school hockey, and I think the problem that the older generation hasn't realized is this generation, the current interns, they're not going to blindly follow anybody because they have more access to more information than any generation ever. So like they're not going to blindly follow you because they can pull up their phone and search to see if you're full of ish. So it's a unique balance of like the youngest person on my show, one of my producers, is 23.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of me trying to hammer in like, you need to do it how I did it when I was your age, it's like, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? What do you think about we should be doing for TikTok? And like using them to the advantage. It's like, yeah, radio won't ever be the same, but if you're lucky enough to have a young staff, like use them. I also think too, it's like, so we have like our promotions girl is 25. She's born in 99. So it's like, if I had to pick a throwback song, Backstreet Boys' I Want It That Way is my favorite song, but that came out in 99.
I know.
Our
Crazy.
25-year-old intern wasn't born yet. So it's like One Direction is now the Backstreet Boys. So I think like it's good to have the youth around, and I sound old as hell saying that, but just so it's like, it's a good litmus test of like, okay, the station probably shouldn't be playing TLC. Well, I love TLC. I think TLC is great, legends, but like the majority of the audience has no idea who TLC is,
Now, before I let you go, I cannot believe the time has flown. Can you believe we've been talking for 57 minutes and 3 seconds?
Hey, man, it's been a pleasure, man. I appreciate you having me.
Well, how can people find your show?
Yeah, so the easiest way, you just search Intern John and Your Morning Show wherever you get your podcast. You can listen live on the free iHeartRadio app by searching Hot 99.5
Yes,
Monday
sir.
to Friday. But yeah, podcast, social media is at YMS Radio, and TikTok as well. We're everywhere. And, come give us a try. I promise it's really good.
I need to get out of my head. I was like, I had this, it's because of my bipolar and my ADHD that I always assume the worst. And I was like, there's no way Intern John would do my show. Like, it's kind of like what Howard Stern talks about where like he lacks confidence. I really need to like stop doing that because this has been a lot of fun, bro.
Yeah, dude, again, like, I consider myself a nice guy, but like reach out because the worst comes to worst if somebody doesn't respond. And it's like, all right, well, you don't need them anyway,
Well, John, this has been an absolute blast. Keep up the good work. I listen while I'm driving around, and your show always puts me in a good mood with all the negativity in the world. So, Intern John, thank you for calling in the Hoppy Hour with Ryan Hoppy. It's been a lot of fun.
Ryan, man, I appreciate it, dude. About damn time you had me on. I'm kidding,
I know.
man. Thank you. This is a lot of fun.
Are you going to the morning show boot camp this year?
I don't know because it always tends to fall on my birthday weekend. And I just opened up a bar in the DC area. So
what's that?
On weekends.
What's that bar called? How can people find it?
Hyde Social, HYDE Social in Clarendon, Virginia. Yes, it's dope. So I would love to go, but I just don't know yet.
You got to open up a bar in Hyde Park called that.
That'd be pretty sick. That could be our next location.
Well, John, keep up the good work, bro. Thank you.
Appreciate it, man. Have a good day.
You too. Or goodbye, John.
Bye.
And that was Intern John from Intern John and Your Morning Show in Washington, D.C. and Baltimore. Now, if this is the first time you've heard my voice, hi, my name is Ryan Hoppy, and I'm the host of this award-winning podcast / radio show. It's a morning radio show in a podcast format. So go to every single major platform that has a podcast and search up Hoppy Radio, HOPPE. Thank you for listening and spread the word.
TikTok, clocks a juke, we're playing cruel pranks. Hoppe's hour almost done, feels like robbery in banks. Ryan Hoppe on the mic, dropping wisdom in streams. Syndicated sorrow, now it's time to shatter dreams. Oh, the Hoppe hour is coming to a close. Radio waves fading like a wilted rose. Laughter and joy dissolving in the air, but we'll keep the rhythm. Oh, life's just so unfair. But the laughter's growing dim. Eardrums mixing Hoppe like fingers without rings. DHX to FM, shout out hit the street. But soon the sound will vanish like shadows in the heat. Oh, the Hoppe hour is coming to a close. Radio waves fading like a wilting rose. Laughter and joy dissolving in the air, but we'll keep the rhythm. Oh, life's just so unfair. But the laughter's growing dim. Eardrums mixing Hoppe like fingers without rings. DHX to FM, shout-outs hit the street. But soon the sound will vanish like shadows in the heat. Oh, the Hoppe hour is coming to a close. Radio waves fading like a wilting rose. Laughter and joy dissolving in the air, but we'll keep the rhythm. Oh, life's just so unfair. Oh, life's just so unfair. Every night like clockwork to a show. Now it's time to face the silence like a TV on snow. Ryan Hoppe held the mic with humor so divine. The void left in our hearts wider than a canyon line. Empty speakers silent, I coming to an end like a roller coaster stopping round the river's bend. Hoppe's jokes and jabs, these are daily grind. Now silence louder than the thoughts we can't rewind. Oh, the Hoppe hour is coming to a close. Radio waves fading like a wilting rose. Laughter and joy dissolving in the air, but we'll keep the rhythm. Oh, life's just so unfair. The Hoppe hour is coming to a close. Radio waves fading like a wilting rose. Laughter and joy dissolving in the air, but we'll keep the rhythm. Oh, life's just so unfair.
Hoppe hour. Hoppe hour.
RyanHoppeRadio.com.
And like that, he's gone.
Whenever we're going outside, all I smell is poop.
I'll kick you in the nuts and we'll call it a day.
Hoppe hour is now over.
Hoppe hour is now over.
Game over. This concludes our broadcast day. Good night, and God bless America.
Doors closing.